Hello everyone, welcome to the Everything Dodgeball podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Leitinger, and today I'm joined by Khiem Nguyen from the US team. Khiem, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, how are you?
Quite good. So it's 6 o'clock on your end, and you're up for a dodgeball chat. So basically dodgeballers, as I see it, are always up for a dodgeball chat, doesn't matter when it is. So first of all, just tell our European listeners who are maybe not as familiar with you, what's your background, how did your dodgeball journey start, and how did you end up at the Cloth World Championship team for US?
Of course. So happy to be here. First of all, Dodgeball is life, and I love all your episodes, so great shout out to Everything Dodgeball. So I started out 2014, I assume, like when I really started doing competitive dodgeball. I started with trampolines, Sky Zone. I'm not sure if you guys have a Sky Zone out there.
Not really.
Yeah, it's like a trampoline dodgeball arena. Started with no sting balls, and then got into what used to be Elite Dodgeball, now USA Dodgeball. And there was the big ball 8.5. And then from there, when they switched to USA Dodgeball, I went to foam. And then I finally got to play cloth this last, I guess, 2 years now, but really this last year, I really started getting into cloth.
Okay, so I'm still not 100% sure about all the different ball types. So no sting, is that a sort of foam ball or a rubber ball?
No sting is like a size of a foam ball, but it's like a rubber texture. It's
but is it the really hard one?
Or no, not squishy? The hard one. This one's a little more squishier.
Okay. So an 8.5 is foam or is it rubber?
8.5 is a big rubber ball, like the kickball.
Okay, yeah. Have there ever been 8.5 foam balls as well?
There's, it's called 8.25 foam balls. It's a bigger foam ball, which is actually really fun too. I played that as a kid.
Okay, yeah, that's the heavier one, right?
Yeah, the heavy one.
Yeah, we play with those a little bit as well. Okay, and no sting is soft, and the sting balls, or are they like the old hard rubber balls that are pretty much the same size as foam balls now? What are those called?
Yeah, roughly. The no sting ball is a little consistent. It's kind of a controversial topic in the USA dodgeball community right now because every no sting ball is different from each other. There's no no sting ball that is similar to the previous one you just held.
Okay. But so at this point, basically, foam is by far the biggest community in the US right now, or?
I would say maybe. I think there is big communities in the US right now that are still playing with no sting balls, especially in leagues, just because of like how versatile the balls are, how cheap you're able to get them, and how long they last. Because foam balls, they go really quick.
Yeah.
They're really expensive.
I've realized that, yeah. And they're quite expensive, yeah. So especially when you play against walls, they burst. And once they have a rip, they are pretty much dead, in my experience at least, because it's hard for me to like control a proper foam ball, but once it rips, it feels like it goes the way it wants to.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So no sting balls. Is there a big is it still played with 6 balls?
Yes, it is played with 6 balls. It has a different rule set. Foam balls is burdened with all the same color ball. No sting. There's their variations. The one that is currently played right now, it has 6 balls with 1 off-color ball, and that's how you consider burden.
Okay,
it's a little weird.
Okay,
it makes sense.
If you have the off-color ball, you have the burden, right? Or
yes,
how does that work?
It's equal balls. If it's 3-3 balls, you have the off-color ball, you have burden.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's weird. But otherwise, is the transition between no sting and foam, is that like a big transition, or is it pretty much the same game?
It used to be a little different, but now everyone plays the foam style. You kind of bring the foam style into the no sting, so now it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
But back then it was not the way you play foam.
Okay. And what's your do you have any other sports background? What did you do before dodgeball?
Just dodgeball.
So just dodgeball. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so how old were you when you started playing dodgeball?
So 2014, I was a sophomore in high school, so 16, 17, around
Okay.
that time.
Okay. And did you do anything recreational or just no sports and then some dodgeball and got into dodgeball completely?
Yeah, it was just no sports. My mom didn't really let me play high school sports at the time. Um, she was a little helicopter parent, as some people
Okay.
say. So I kind of had to sneak out and go to the nearest trampoline park I had in my neighborhood. I just walked there. So I just told my mom, "Hey, I'm going to go work out." I went to the trampoline park. I would go play some tournaments. She has no idea what dodgeball really is, but she knows now, kind of,
Okay.
but she still doesn't know.
Okay. So she still doesn't approve of it to this day.
Uh, she approves of it, but when I say dodgeball, she'd be like, "Oh, how was your volleyball tournament, or how was your basketball tournament?" Some stuff like
Ah,
that.
awesome. Even your own parents. Oh, that hurts.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So did she know that you played at the World Championships in summer, or did you say I make a trip to Europe?
She just knew I went to Europe.
Okay.
I
That is
don't
completely
even bother
crazy.
trying to
Love
explain
that.
it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. So you have played a few different ball types and somehow you ended up playing cloth in summer. So how did that end up happening?
So I've been trying out for the foam team since 2018.
Yeah.
Um, the 2018 one, I didn't make it. I did not get the pass to make the team. 2018, same way, I didn't make it. And then COVID happened, and 2021 came around. I can't remember what happened that year, but something had happened. Um, and then 2022 came around, and I missed the tryout because of uh, my son's birth.
Okay.
Uh, and I just kind of had like kind of unfortunate stuff happening with like all the foam trials. Like I was new, I didn't play as well as I should have, and I didn't deserve it, and I wasn't as good as I should be now. And coming into this year's or the last year's tryouts, I looked at the roster for foam, and I was like, or the the squad that was trying out for foam, and I just looked at it. I'm like, I don't think I'll make the roster for foam. So I went ahead and gave cloth a shot because I feel like if I had to really choose a ball type where I 100% can make the team and make it to Worlds, I chose cloth. And it was I only played cloth a handful of times before that,
Yeah.
and once I really started playing, I really enjoyed it. Like I really like the rule set, the ball, and just like the way the style of play is.
So when was the first time you picked up a cloth ball?
Oh man, I think 2022 was the first time I picked up a cloth ball.
So
It
after
was a
Worlds in Edmonton, so you didn't go to it there because of the birth of your son, and afterwards you tried it out for the first time.
correct, yes.
Okay. And is there like any cloth games or league or anything near you, or did you play in any tournaments, or do you have like a regular cloth practice that you can go to, or how did you get yourself into the cloth game?
So when I played cloth the first time in 2022, it was just a tournament division that we had for USC Dodgeball. That was my first time, and then we don't really have. I don't think anyone really has a cloth league besides LA now. Um, and cloth in the US is very, very small. There's not a lot of representation of cloth. I'm hoping it'll change in the near future here, but back then there was almost no cloth being played.
Okay. So how did you train it, or how did you try to get ready for the World Championships, or to make the roster, or how was the roster for cloth chosen?
So when I found out I was going to try out for cloth, I just had a net in my backyard and just practiced with my cloth ball. Just kept throwing and throwing, and then we had maybe one or two practices with the cloth ball in Dallas, and that's all I really had to practice with for cloth. We had a couple of divisions in the USC Dodgeball rounds that we would travel to, but honestly, not that much practice as we should have for cloth. And then
Yeah.
when the practice squad got announced and we had a couple practices, we probably had, as a unit of a USA Dodgeball cloth, we probably only had 4 get-togethers. That's including tryout, combine, and an actual practice, and
Yeah.
that's all leading up to Worlds.
It's still crazy. So, would you say in foam compared to cloth is like your game style or the strength of your game the same, or did you have to change a lot of things for cloth?
I practically played the same style both in foam and cloth. I'm very much a middle player. I tend to look for catches at my own detriment sometimes,
Mm.
but I try to do a lot of movement in the middle, and I literally play the same way.
Okay, yeah. But and does it work the same in cloth and foam? Because I I've been trying a little bit of foam now, and I'm not the best catcher in cloth. So in foam, it's even much harder for me. I'm trying to get used to it and trying to learn from the foam balls a little bit in that way. But being predominantly a middle player and also going for a lot of catches, does that work in foam?
It honestly really doesn't work in foam too much, especially if you play at the top teams. Uh, in foam, I had more of the mindset of like get out the way and dodge rather than catch. I really only sub for catch when it's almost necessary to,
Yeah.
when you need to bring back the game.
Okay. And so, how is that different in cloth? Do you feel like?
Cloth, when you have 6 people on the court, there's not so much room. I mean, that's the same thing with foam, but with cloth, I feel like I'm able to hunker down more because the ball is a little slower. It's a lot easier to catch than a foam ball, and I'm able to track it more because in foam sometimes you can have 4 ball offense on the other side, but cloth is usually going to be 3. If you have 4,
Yeah.
then it's usually not going towards the middle unless I have the ball in the middle, which you guys saw at Worlds where we tried
Yeah.
the one ball in the middle. But it is a little different. But my play style, I kind of just play the same.
Okay. Okay. So, and do you think your play style is more fitting for cloth or foam?
Uh, it's definitely more fitting for cloth. The way I play, it more correlates with the cloth middle play style than
Yeah.
foam. I'm still trying to adjust my foam style. Still trying to get better with foam, but currently, as how I'm playing right now, I play much better at cloth.
Okay, yeah, because it feels like it felt like you either have been doing it for a longer time or the transition for you was really easy because like the way you interpreted middle in cloth was quite awesome and quite effective, I might say. And I think many people would agree watching those semis, quarters, and final games. So basically, what I really wanted to get into with you is how did you develop your catching abilities? Because at least at what I saw from especially the semis against England and also the finals against us, which was we basically talked in our pre-game um, uh, huddle that we were like setting up the tactic and stuff for the final at the World Championships. We talked basically about 3 players because we didn't know many others of your team. So we obviously knew Payan and we knew Nate on that they were gonna play on the wings as well, which surprised us a little that more played on the wing instead of Payan. But we also saw your semifinal against England, so we were like, okay, we're gonna treat you like I don't know if you know Murphy from Northern Ireland, the middle
Yes, I do.
player, Aaron Murphy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we basically treated you the same way we tried to treat him and just ignore you basically as much as possible and don't throw at you because it seemed like it's not a good outcome if you just throw single balls at you. And so your agility and your speed in the middle and also your catching abilities just are a big nuisance to the opponents. And so we thought just we're going to leave you till the end, and then we don't make the mistakes England did and give you catches to come back from a 1v6. That was basically what we talked about, and the rest of the team we didn't really see a lot and didn't really know, so we just had to adapt during the game. But that was definitely something that really stood out. And I remember one instance when I just threw a single ball at you and I didn't know it was you standing there. I just forgot in that moment, and I saw just, I think Payan or Nate, someone made a catch out of a 3-ball attack, and I was like, okay, we were up 2 players, now we're equal. If I make this fast hit, we're up again. And I just turn and throw while standing, and while throwing I see it's you, and you're like, I take that, thank you. And I was like, oh my god, that was so dumb. But there was like, it's very seldom that I get caught sometimes, obviously, because I throw a lot, but not like that. Like, I think the way you and Payan catch people is a little bit different as to stuff that we see in Europe, basically. And so I thought maybe you have some insights or some advice as well, how you go for catches and how you set yourself up to be successful at catching.
Yeah. First of all, I'm very honored to be compared to Murphy. What a great player Murphy is. And
Yes,
it was definitely felt that I was not getting thrown out a lot in the finals. I had realized, like, yeah, I'm not getting any balls getting thrown near me, and they're just practically just ignoring me at this point.
sorry, Dad. But out of respect.
No, it perfectly made sense. I remember when you had your podcast episode with Nate, and it had said my offense wasn't as good as the other ones, and there was no need for to get me out because I'm more of a defensive player, which I completely agree with. It was definitely the right choice. No need to get me out. I'm not an offensive threat, right?
Yeah, so you're not no offensive threat, but compared to the other guys you have, like your throw is just, it's like with Murphy, you have a weapon and you're fast, so you obviously can hit people out. But compared to a throw from, I mean, Moore or what's the other one's name? I'm forgetting. He played middle as well next to
Chaz.
you. Chaz, yeah. So he also has quite the rocket on him. So we're like, okay, compared to that, I'd rather deal with your throw than with your catch or the other one's throw.
Yeah. No, it was a great adaptation you guys did, and I'm sure you guys watched film and it made sense.
Yeah.
But going back to catching, with me and Pine's experience coming up in the U.S. Dodgeball scene, 8.5, the big rubber kickballs, it was very predominant ball type. It was the main ball type of USA for a long time. And that is a pretty similar ball style to cloth, where it's bigger, slower, more team oriented. And USA Dodgeball has always been more catch heavy. A lot of players just set up, square up for that catch more often than I'm sure than any other country. And that's just ingrained in our minds now, especially with ones that I've played during this 8.5 era. And just so many reps of catching. I used to just sit when we did our throw lines to warm up. I would just sit on the line and I just have my whole team throw at me, just get my catching going. But back then I just did so many reps of catching and I just got used to it. So where I'm able to it's just natural for me. I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. But when you think about it, how do you like track the ball? Because I feel, especially coming from cloth, going to foam and not being a catcher, basically, and not going for a lot of catches, especially in the past, I feel like in cloth I have a lot of peripheral vision, basically. I try to see as much as possible, and if something comes at me, I'm fast enough to block it or get out of the way, but I'm not fast enough to get my hands or my body behind it. So what I can do is to really set up for a single throw where I know it's coming, and I'm not good at it, but I'm working on that. But picking a throw that I want to catch out of 3 players and then catching it as well, if I just see it out of my periphery, is really hard for me. And so if you think about catching, if you are in that middle spot, there are or four other players with you on your side, so you not have a lot of room, and you see them coming up with a 3-ball attack. So how do you set up for a dodge or a catch? What is your focus? What are you looking at?
Got it. So if I have six people around me, obviously you can't really move too much. It's almost just either a step to the left, right, or a jump, or you just go down. So typically, what I just do, I try to watch one. I try to watch a lot of film to see for tendencies of players, how they wind up, and just the flow of how their team comes up. And in game, uh, there's a flow of when you come up to the line and you throw or pump fake together. Usually, the thrower, they tend to disrupt that flow. They they walk up to get into their step, or where the other people that aren't throwing, they kind of just lazy go up there. They're not really stepping to the throw. So you kind of just real quick identify who's most likely the thrower going to be, especially in cloth. The cloth, you kind of got to really put your whole body into a throw. So it's very much more uh, dramatic of when someone's about to come up and throw at you. So it's a lot easier for me to identify to see where the ball would come from. And then at that point, it's just keeping your eye on the ball the whole time and just react.
So you basically try to pick your target and then just stay on that ball. So you're not. So how is your peripheral vision? Because I tend, or I try to do that, and I have a really bad like recognition of who's throwing, because usually I don't care. I have a ball in my hand and I rather watch everything and see what's happening everywhere so I can react to more stuff. And if someone's throwing at me, I'm fast enough to block that, usually, not always, but so I don't have to follow the ball. And that's something I realized when I'm in the middle. I'm too late, because if I look a little bit to the wrong side and the ball hits me from the blind side, even though I know it's coming and I'm reacting, I'm more or less jumping in the way of the ball, but I'm not catching it. So I'm much rather dodging. And so I'm trying to figure out how to like find out who's throwing. And I think with some teams it's really easy to do that. Like I'd say for Team USA, I was always pretty certain who would throw. But like good European teams, or at least we try, and our team definitely tries to do that, is the whole point of our fakes and our run up is to not let the opponent see who is throwing, to really sell our throws and our fakes so that a single ball is still effective, because otherwise even European nations can catch them quite well. And so I think we're quite good at that compared to like the US team in that regard, where like the pace is so different. And it, like in 2022 it was even worse, where we're like, okay,
Yeah.
we know Schmidt is going to throw out of the middle
Yeah, everyone knows
90%,
who's
and
throwing.
you could yeah, and you could see it half an hour earlier. It still was halfway effective, but if you could adapt to that, then that wasn't the problem. Still, the catching was the problem back then, because we didn't know at all how to deal with that. But the throwing and the attacks weren't that effective. And it was better this time around, I felt like, but still, it seemed like that was the biggest weakness, at least out of my point. And so I think it's really hard if I play against good players in Austria and I have not a lot of pressure from my wings because I'm in the middle, like in practice at the club, then it's extremely hard to find out who is throwing. If the pressure is really
Yeah.
good and they tend to disrupt the attack, then it's a little bit easier, but still, yeah, it's so hard. So I guess practice, a lot of practice. So what
Yeah.
if obviously for you it's natural and ingrained at this point, but if you think about it even deeper, so what are like tells that you're looking for if someone is throwing, how are they throwing, where are they throwing, and stuff like that?
Yeah. I typically just stare at the middle player the whole time, because majority of the time middle is going to throw at middle. Um, I look for their their feet set up, if they're ready to be able to just step into the throw. Like I said before, the pacing of how teams come up, and obviously if you're playing a really good team and their pacing is really good and they're pumping at the same time, their arms are moving at the same time, it's very very hard to tell who's throwing. And at that point, I just commit to dodge because I realize that they're not giving me anything to look for. But I just look for feet setup and their arm slot of where their pump is, especially in cloth, because not everyone can fully do a pump with a cloth ball.
Mhm.
It's kind of more of a short arm. So if I see one person really wind up, my eyes go straight to them. But other than that, I kind of just it's a very educational guess of where the ball is going to come from.
Yeah.
It, if I'm wrong, I'm either going to try to get out of the way or I'm going to get hit, essentially, because I can't commit to a ball that I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But,
Okay, so and you're really trying, so as soon as you know or think who is throwing, you really lock onto the ball, right?
yes, I try to lock on because that's the best way to catch it, where you can see the ball come in at you the whole way
Yeah.
instead of just trying to do just a reaction catch.
Yeah. That's completely crazy because the thing is, I've been playing dodgeball since 2013 now, so really a long time. But I've started as a wing player basically, and I've never left that position. So I'm really almost always playing on that left wing, sometimes on the right wing, and just if I need a breather or the opponents are done anyways, I'm gonna go to the middle or to the second spot. So I never went for catches for the first, I think, 8 years. I didn't go for one catch ever. And then at
Yeah,
some point, the level of the opponents and also people found out that I didn't do it, and like the spotlight was much more on me. So people tried to take advantage of that missing spot in my arsenal, and I really had to get better at catching because I basically had no catching abilities till 4 years ago.
yeah,
So when I made a catch, it was out of reaction and was not intentional. And then I trained it quite intensively and just to have it if I really need it. And I went like for the European Championships in 2020. I made 2 catches or 3 catches, and it was all in one game. And I needed to because we were
nice.
2-6 down. And I made those catches, but I didn't make one catch before and after that. And I didn't go for any as well. So, and that worked out, but it got even worse. Every year it got harder if you don't have any catching abilities because people are going to throw so much more committed at you and know they're just going to aim for center and you're just going to be done for. So I really had to practice catching, and I tried it and I practiced it for a long time. But the thing is, I always look people in the eyes. So I try to read what they're doing from their eyes and really know where their focus is so that I can take advantage of that. So it's really, I never watch the ball because I basically don't care where it goes. And I found out that that is really my weakness in catching because I'm not tracking the ball. And I found that out 1 month, I think 1 month ago, when I tried foam, my first little foam tournament in Austria. And I was like, okay, this is so ridiculous. You can't catch that ball. And then I was just in a pause. I was throwing around with one of my club teams, who's a really good catcher, Johan. Shout out to Johan, MC Joe. And the thing is, and I was just latching all onto that ball and just tracking it. And suddenly I caught, and I was like, okay, fuck, how long did I play dodgeball or catching wrong? But it's so hard for me to switch to that, and if I don't make the switch, I'm not making that catch. So I think that was my takeaway, and I hoped you would give me the confirmation that the most important thing is to track the ball from the release till it is at your chest, and then you basically automatically fold your body around it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Would you
just being
agree
able to
with
see,
that?
yes, being able to see the ball come the whole way just gives you that extra second of like being able to set up or get out the way. It just helps so much more with catching wise. But to be
Yeah.
fair though, you as a wing player, you don't. That's not really much of a skill that you need to polish.
Yeah,
But
but
if I had to
at
tell,
some point it is. Like Payan,
I
for
agree. Yeah,
example, that's something that makes you so much, because as I'm getting older as well, so I'm much slower than I was a few years ago. And then it's becomes really easy for people to hit me out. And once I'm open, I'm often the target. So if I'm open, I see the whole team basically rushing at me and trying to get me out. And if I have a ball, I'm quite good at surviving. But without a ball, I'm just there dodging for my life. And once I make 1 or 2 catches and people know that I can, at least in theory, catch, it makes them much more cautious with the throws, and it's easier to dodge again. So I think dodging is also important just to be able to survive better as well in the long run. So
Yeah.
so basically my routine
It's,
now is every training session I start 10 minutes or 15 minutes throwing with a foam ball and trying to catch that, because afterwards catching a cloth ball is much easier, and also my fingers are thankful for it, that I don't get bashed by a cloth ball the whole time. So I think I'm keeping that up.
yeah, no, that's a really good warm up, especially with cloth, because it so easily can mess up your finger, especially if you're just warming up. It just ruins your whole day or
Yeah.
the match.
Yeah, so that was a follow-up question. How are your fingers, man?
Oh, my fingers are pretty good. I still have one jam from Worlds, but other than that, it's okay. It's just the way I catch. I don't. I feel like the majority of the reason why fingers get wrecked in cloth is when they do kind of like the basket catch, where their hands or their palms are up and they try to scoop it into their body, and that could just hit your finger straight on, and
Yeah.
that will really mess up your finger. But the way I catch is I kind of stick my hands up. I put them up by my head. So if a ball comes at my head, I'm able to catch it all hands at my face, or able to just like to protect my face if the ball's coming
Yeah.
too fast. Um, but if the ball's coming at my stomach or my side, I kind of catch it with my body. I just
Yeah.
I kind of hug the ball, so that it gives me less problems of a ball hitting my fingers, because I'm essentially just stopping the ball with my body rather than really just trying to catch it. Essentially, I don't know if you kind of understand what I was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely, I always teach people to catch like that, especially for broken fingers. And in Austria, handball is a big sport, and everyone can catch a ball in front of their face, but with the fingers pointed at the ball. And I think with one ball that's not throwing too hard, that might be okay. But for dodgeball, it's not okay, and especially if there's more than one ball coming at you. So that's my next question, basically. So catching one ball, I now theoretically understand, and I think I'm getting better at it. Catching one ball out of two or even three, that's a complete mystery to me. And I think it's two things. I don't want to commit to it because I'm extremely afraid I'm gonna hurt my fingers, because if I'm catching one ball and the other one is hitting me, I don't have that kind of commitment to go for that catch unless it's absolutely necessary. So I'm really amazed by people who can just pick out one ball out of many and just commit to that catch. What's your tactic for that? Because I saw that a few times against England that you did
Yeah,
that.
I could bring up the England situation. That moment was kind of like I need to have a catch here to really bring us back. We were down a lot of players. So throughout the game, I recognize who has a really good arm, who's throwing faster than the other ones, and the way they came up. I was in the left corner, and the way they came up, I don't remember his name. I don't really know his name, but the guy that I did catch, he was a bigger guy. He was their middle thrower, and he was throwing pretty hard. And he's the closest in front. He's directly in front of me. So theoretically, if he's the faster thrower and he's the short distance, the ball's gonna get to me first.
Yeah.
So when they came up, I kind of just dumped the ball to kind of hopefully disrupt their pace of when they come up. Uh, and then as soon as I dumped that ball, I stared straight at the person in front of me and just tracked their ball the whole way. And it is kind of just luck, because if you fully commit to one ball, and if that ball misses and another ball hits you, then you're out.
Yeah.
But at this moment, I was like, I need to commit to one ball, and in my educational guess would have been, this guy's going to get the ball to me first, and so I'm just going to commit to that ball. And luckily,
Yeah.
it was that ball.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I think it comes down a lot to commitment, timing, and also like preparation, that you already knew beforehand who's going to come up, who's going to throw at you, and you basically watch the whole game about weaknesses, tendencies, and stuff like that, that you can like use in that moment to make that catch. So catching is more than just the catch by itself. It's more of a setup thing. And I think that is really interesting of how you make that catch happen. And obviously everyone can fumble a ball, and if it doesn't come the way you want it to, you're gonna get hit out anyways. But making that preparation beforehand makes and breaks it a lot. And in those situations, you really like need that. And yeah, that is, I think that is also really interesting for newer players or players who just aren't good at catching, like that, picking your spot, knowing what's coming at you, and then catching those balls. That is awesome. Love that. That is really good.
Yeah,
So
just got a full commit.
yeah, and that is sometimes just tough to do, especially if more than one ball is coming at you. So if I have a blocking ball in my hand, I have no problem with 3, 4 balls coming at me because dodging is quite natural. And if you have a block ball, you just block the other
Yeah,
ones away, and that works quite fine. But catching is just such a different mindset. I feel like it's really
yeah,
just, you have to be a little bit of a psycho to just commit to one throw and just let the other ones do what they do, and
yeah,
also really be confident in that assessment you made before. Because
yeah,
if you overthink
yeah,
it, yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. I agree. But to be fair, though, of the four major skills in dodgeball, throwing, catching, blocking, dodging, I think catching is probably the least important one of the four because I feel like the other three are just much more important, especially in cloth, having just to stay alive. If you go for a catch early on and you miss, you're already a player down.
Yeah, I
Because go ahead.
No, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think absolutely I would say as well that catching is the least important. But the thing is, I think if you have a big catch, it elevates every other asset that you have, because having that catch as a backup makes you so much more, um, just people who can catch really well are in players and opponents' heads. And if you are in their head that they know you can catch them, and you just watch them and look at them, and they know they can't throw basically to your body at all, you have them by the balls basically. So I see it
Yeah,
sometimes in training when I watch people and I just pretend that I'm ready to catch. It makes them hesitate, and everything gets worse from that. And also, like, if you can throw really hard but afterwards you're just dodging and no threat is to catching, I just can post throw so easily without any worries. And if you give, catching always gives worries to your opponent, and I think that is so big in dodgeball. So the skill on its own probably not that important, and I've been very successful without any catching abilities. But I think the better the opponents get, the more important it gets to have it in your back pocket, basically.
yeah, I completely agree. It's crazy how much mental of a mental game it is in dodgeball than it is a physical game. That's really one of the reasons
Absolutely.
why I really love dodgeball.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think Payan is like the best example for that, because obviously he has an amazing arm. He is not the youngest anymore and he's not the fastest anymore. But the thing is, because he's so good at catching and he's such a psycho with his timing, it
Yeah,
makes everything he does so much more efficient. Because even if you have him, 50% of him has you. So you have to be much more careful, and then you just go for his toes and he just makes a little split jump, and he can be much more efficient with everything because he has that
yeah.
catching threat. And people who don't have that, just, yeah, I think they lose a little bit of the respect from throwers. So if I see someone who just doesn't commit to catches, I don't care where I hit them. I just aim for body and just try to hit them anywhere. If I see you as an opponent, I'm really trying to hit your left toenail, or I'm trying to, like, slightly touch your right shoulder, basically. And that makes it
No, you're
much
one hundred
harder to
percent
play
right.
against. Uh,
Yeah,
so
that's
on
completely
that
great
note,
mindset.
on that note, you played a lot of European teams and played a lot of different cloth styles. So basically, you had no cloth experience, played US cloth scene, and then went to Worlds and had so many different playing styles. So did you find there was a big difference, where catching was much more important, or where it was much easier to catch, or teams that it was much harder to set up for catches or find those situations?
Um, During the England game, especially our semi game, they were very aggressive. they wanted to close out these matches, and which when they didn't need to, they could have just played the clock and just really stalled the game. But when you're playing such an aggressive team, that really benefited me because there was a lot of solo thrown balls or just them trying to just close out these games when they don't really need to. So that's when my catching came in and really helped our team because I was able to just bring back those games when we honestly shouldn't have been in it at all. It should have just been a loss if they just played it correctly. But there's other teams that played really slow. They didn't have as good as arms, so I didn't really need to set up for a catch too much. I more so just stayed alive, got out the way of the ball, and just played our player advantage. But I can't honestly remember major different play styles besides Austria's and England's totally different play styles, which was great. It was really fun to play both of y'all countries. I really enjoyed that. But it just felt like dodgeball to me. I can't really remember too much different play styles leading up to semis and finals.
Yeah. Completely fair enough. So comparing the England game and the Austria game, were there any felt differences for you, and how did you see those two games?
In the semis, they really targeted the middle players a lot. I feel like I was targeted a lot, but I didn't commit to the catches as much. I really tried to get out the way in the early game. And then Austria game, we talked about it. You guys didn't go for me at all. So I kind of was just standing there most of the time and just waiting for our offensive throws to come. You guys were much slower, more methodical, while England was very brute force, up in your face. So which really helped our play style. I think our play style can really go well against aggressive play styles because that's what we're just used to in U.S. dodgeball. But with y'all's play style, Austria's, it was much more of like a slow, methodical game, which I feel like we did okay with. We didn't win, but I really liked our game, our USA versus Austria, just because it was more of like I said, methodical game. It wasn't just I'm gonna throw as hard as I can into your chest. I feel like it was very more of what top dodgeball is like.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I think pretty much those differences, I'd agree with those. And I see a lot of people are not very happy with that sort of game style. So like the England playing style, always very aggressive. And I've been talking about it on the podcast before that like they can because they rely on their strength and they're just so good at it that usually it doesn't matter, that they're not really clinical about ending games. And let's see how they change that up in the future. But also like people complain that tactical game is not as fun to watch or to play. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's definitely not fun to watch and definitely not fun to play if you're on the bad side of it. But it's just how you win cloth games sometimes, and sometimes boring dodgeball is winning dodgeball, and that's just how it is, especially with these rule sets.
And do you feel like foam has an advantage in that side because you have to hit out every player?
Yeah, I agree. I listened to your other episodes where you talked about how we can change the cloth. I feel like if we get an extra point on eliminating the whole team in cloth would be great, or just some type of change to where it's not just a stall. If we're up 3-4 players and there's only a minute left, cloth has its advantages. Yes, trying to eliminate every player, but there's also in foam you can also stall too. You can also like make these games instead of we have a set 3-minute game, their matches can go 6, 7, 8, theoretically the whole game of just staying alive. So
yeah, because I've been thinking about that question quite a bit and also talking about it with different people, and there are lots of different opinions, and obviously there are also kind of ideological opinions as well, as I feel like foam players always gonna go for foam and say what is shit about cloth and the other way around. And which is also very fun if people now switch from one to the other. They kind of adapt the ideological aspect of it as well. So it's really fun. It's really, I think that's just how people are in a way. And we can see that in politics as well. So basically, that's the political side of dodgeball, I feel like. But I think there are lots of arguments made for both sides. And for, I think, Elijah's question, or I think he made a video vlog about it on that point. Congratulations. He picked you as number one cloth player, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, congratulations on
I
that.
talk about it. Yeah, I was like, I didn't agree with him. I think Pine should have been over me, but I guess his opinion is different because I don't really see myself as that top player.
Yeah,
but I was really happy when he did that. I was really it made me feel like I earned it.
Yeah, absolutely. I obviously have a very narrow window into that, and I think, as I said, we talked about you two players and Nate as well, but I don't know what you did in the US and what kind of tournaments you played there as well. But I think it can be either Payan or you, at least for us, because the thing is, if you make opponents think about you, it has a big impact for the whole team, and you have the results to show for it. So basically, without you, you probably wouldn't have been in that final, or definitely wouldn't have been in that final. Without Payan, probably not as well. But so basically, there's an argument for both. I think Payan in the final was definitely probably the best player on that
Yes.
court for everyone, and the most effective player. But also, like, you don't have the throwing skills or like the finesse that Payan has with his arm, and not the brute force, but the skill is something so unique that you can really change games, and not a lot of players can do that and really change a game on their own. And you did that for a few games, and that is just really important at that point. So I think it was fully deserved, and there probably Pan could have deserved it as well as maybe an MVP at Worlds. But yeah, I think he knows how good he is, and I think you definitely deserved it. And it was a fun thing. I've never seen that in Dodgeball, because in Europe we don't have a channel like Elijah or somewhere with that opinions. You just throws them out there, and I really enjoy that. I think it's really fun. Maybe I have him on at some point if he wants to. But on that point, I kind of lost my thought. Where was I?
Okay.
Boring foam or boring cloth. Yeah, because I think, so the tactical aspect of the game is just something you have in every sport, basically, and it's always something that you don't really like in soccer, which is huge in Europe. You also play the clock as soon as you're 1-0 up, and I mean, in football it's basically the same, where you try to steal as much time as possible. And in basketball, it sometimes works the other way around, where you have 10 timeouts left in the end, and like the last minute takes half an hour, which is also kind of weird. So I think time is such a big component of the game that it sometimes is a bit boring, but it also adds so much of complexity and nuance to the game, that even though like the mere action and spectacular kills and dodges or catches don't happen that much in that time slot, it's still a whole different mental game. And I think even a lot of people watch chess apparently, and that's a really slow game unless you really know the tactics. So I think there is really value and entertainment in that. But for the lay person that doesn't know dodgeball, it's probably not that exciting. But I don't think many people who don't know the sport or play the sport are gonna watch it anyways, if they don't understand it. And so, I think there are arguments made for both sides. So if you have any opinion on that, feel free to let it rip.
Time matches are tough. Obviously, when you're up, you're going to want to play with the clock, which I think best of sevens or best of series or first to whatever, I think is a lot more superior. The fact that you get to eliminate every player, I think, is the way to go. Because for someone like me, who is not going to get thrown at all majority of the game, and then when they have when they have 4-player advantage, I just kind of stand there. And I know they're not going to throw at me. And it kind of sucks because if they
Yeah.
would have had to throw at me, I at least have a chance. But in the cloth playstyle, they're not going to throw at me, and they're just going to win just by purposely missing. Is it's a little upsetting, but that's just how the game is, and there's definitely room to change rules for cloth. But as of right now, it's not too bad. I still enjoyed it at Worlds. So
Yeah, but on the other side, I would say the responsibility also lies within you to change that, because basically, if you only have that asset, and I don't say that you do, but if your biggest asset is catching, and you just go for catches for 1.5 minutes, and I see player do that, even European players who should know better than that, and if you find out after the second attack they're just throwing wide of me, then you have suddenly so much room to do aggressive stuff. And I think it really puts the responsibility back on you to adapt to that and like make something happen. And the thing is, the moment I see people are not throwing me, and it doesn't happen that often in Austria because people know I'm not that good of a catcher and I'm much more of a threat. Even if you're 3-1 up against me, if I have balls and I can throw at you, it's not going to be too easy to survive 1.5 minutes. So people tend to throw at me still and not see out the game because it's not going to happen. But the thing is, as soon as someone does that, there is an answer to that tactically as well, and you can put a lot of excitement back into the game and make people throw at you. So
yeah,
I think it's also a bit of a lazy excuse, and it happened and it happens still. But I think it's like when Pep Guardiola made tiki taka and Barcelona had 83% of the ball for the whole time. I don't know if that makes any sense for the US, but in Austria, in Europe, that reference makes a lot of sense with soccer. So basically, they changed the tactics, and suddenly they had the ball the whole game, and they beat everyone up. And then another team came along and said, okay, we're going to counter them. Once we have the ball, we just rush forward. And then they beat them 3-0, even though the other team has the possession of the ball for the whole game. And then something else came along. And I think in dodgeball, we're stuck up at a situation where we're like, okay, the game is played to that level. And basically, that's what Austria did. At this point, I would say we have the superior tactics to England. They have probably the superior skill, but we have the superior tactics. And we haven't beaten them in the men's division yet, but so it's time to make that next step and find out what lies in that passive play, in that 1.5 minutes that doesn't happen too often. If you just go for the catches against a smart nation, that won't happen anymore. So you have to make something of it, and then you can produce epic wins again, and it happens, but not if you're just going for the one outer. And so I think a 1v4 shouldn't be won often because the other team has made
yeah,
so much progress in the first half that they are supposed to win that game mostly. And I say 90%. That is what I want as a coach.
yeah.
But the other team has still so many, and I've seen it 1,000 times, and I've been mad about it 1,000 times. Dodgeball is a game of mistakes, and if you force your opponents to make mistakes, even at that level, they're gonna make them. So you can spend those 1.5 minutes really well and find slots to get into catching positions or throwing positions as well. So I think that isn't really an issue. I would like to see extra points maybe, but I think the foam mentality of hitting everyone out and needing to hit everyone out is an aspect that I understand, but I think tactically the other thing makes the whole set much more nuanced and far more complex, and because that's something I see in foam and I like hitting out every player, but the game doesn't change so much if you have 6 players or 3 players or 1 player. You're still playing the same game. And in cloth, with the time and the way you can throw the balls, you're playing lots of different situations. And I think that is something that wouldn't harm the foam game. And I think it might be more entertaining, and an extra point, in my opinion, is a good idea. But I think the root problem is more that we need to evolve tactically. That was a very long rant. I didn't want to talk as much, but what's your like 2 cents on that rant?
No, I completely agree. Like, the tactics need to evolve and just to be more aggressive, especially in that situation. Um, no, I completely agree with what you said. Uh, it's just trying to think of like how we can make it more exciting for newer people watching, but it's just tough. It's a tough conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's a tough conversation for pretty much every sport. And it's really
Yeah,
hard to get people engaged in a sport that they don't play themselves and that they're not involved. And I don't think it happens very often anywhere. So there are some sports where like the party of watching is so great that you do it, but otherwise you always watch a game because you've played it. And if it's
yeah,
baseball and you've played it, if it's basketball, even if it's just at the recreational level and you just see what those people are doing and what you can do, then it's just much more entertaining. And in dodgeball, it's the same, and we just don't have many people playing, so we don't have many people watching at this point. So I think getting people to watch dodgeball who have never played dodgeball is almost impossible because it's too fast for them to understand. It's too complex
yeah,
to get. It's too tough to follow what happens. And I don't think that the 1.5 minutes, that is what is boring to us as players, because that is what is boring to us to play. And it's also boring to watch. But to outsiders, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. And so if we can get the level even up more, because I think I've watched the final and I think you watched it a few times as well. I don't think it was ever boring. There were tactical aspects, but I don't think it had more than maybe 2 or 3 minutes in that whole game where it was really just complete waste shots and time wasting.
yeah. It wasn't really to that last game where you guys were 1v6 against me and like
Yeah,
30 seconds left, and it was just that was
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But
definitely. I'm not gonna fuck around with that. I've seen your 1v6 against England. I said to my guys, if you throw invalids, I don't care. Get out one after
yeah,
the other. But if you get caught, you're dead to me.
I watched that game a lot since the Worlds. It gives me nightmares, and I'm very sad whenever every time I watch it.
I understand that. I'm a little bit sorry, but it gave me a lot of nightmares playing it basically and afterwards as well. And still, it's maybe one of the most emotional games of my career and still one of the most frustrating ones as well, watching it back until those last seconds. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
man,
but
it
it
was
was a nail biter.
yeah, it was very crazy how close our games were. But I was very curious to see if uh, how you guys would play against England in the
Yeah, me
finals.
too.
And I'm very curious to see how US would stack up against NI,
Yeah,
Northern Ireland. We get to see them at all, so I want to see these new matchups for next Worlds.
yeah,
Hopefully,
absolutely. I mean, you played an eye in the mixed in the bronze medal match, and we played
oh,
England
I
in the
wasn't on
mixed.
the mixed squad.
Yeah, fair enough. But so a little bit of crossover happened there, but the men's game is just something different. And I think probably at least from last year's perspective, England was the best matchup for you. I think Northern Ireland would have been the worst matchup for you. I feel
I
like,
think so
and
too.
we
I
were
think we would
in
have
between.
trouble.
Yeah, I think so too, because they combine the aggression with also more of a methodical style in the end. And yeah, I think probably would have the hardest time against Northern Ireland. I think you're gonna have a hard time against England the next time around because I think they're really gonna. I'm not gonna let that sit on their shoulders,
Yeah,
but you really use the time and the moment and perform to your best, and that was absolutely crazy and awesome. And I
yeah,
think
we
you
definitely had
gave
the best matchup of the four in bracket, or of the three of you
probably,
guys. Yeah,
yeah, which was really crazy because everyone wanted to avoid Northern Ireland, and then in the
yeah,
end, everyone almost lost to you. So yeah, but that was at least very entertaining. I feel like.
yeah.
Okay, so do you have any other points on like World Championships or something to say about that or any of the other matchups?
Uh, I mean, our finals was so great. The atmosphere was awesome. The crowd was amazing. I
Yeah,
never heard such a loud crowd before. This is my first Worlds, so I've never
yeah,
heard such a loud crowd. And obviously, being in your home country and your crowd was really amazing to hear. It was great. It was a great time. Uh, Unfortunately, I just wish we were able to play every country.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's
Boy,
almost
I'm so
impossible with
happy we
all of them.
didn't. Otherwise,
Yeah, yeah,
whew.
yeah, yeah. But just be able to play more top teams in round robin would be great.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we play the lesser teams, and I saw some of yours and England's scores where you guys are just stomping other teams. It was it's kind of disheartening because when we see our round robin matches were close in the first half, and then we kind of took it away. But it wasn't just heavy sided like y'all's.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's also just Worlds because this year was just such a big tournament with so many nations, and the focus really was to get everyone there. And so it's going to be different in the future, and it's going to be a little bit closer, and you need qualifications or qualifiers to get there. So I think the level will be much tighter, and you won't have those blowouts at least to that extent. But that's also an interesting point where you said before, like games to 7 or something like that would be maybe better for spectators. I think even though no one wants to see a 40 versus 0, no one wants to see
Yeah,
that. But the thing is, no one watches it anyways. So I
that's
think
true.
like group games like that always going to happen. And I think for nations that are just coming up, and we've been that nation before, where you're getting just smashed by England or something like that. If it's just best to 7, then it takes 10 minutes and it's done for. And like going to international tournaments or even local or regional tournaments, it's really important for those teams to also get the time, even though it's annoying to play against a team where you're beating them 40-0, but you can get your reserves in, you can try something out, you can have a little bit of fun. Obviously this world, it was really important to get your score line as high as possible, which didn't help at all, and I hope in the future it doesn't have to be that way. But I think like making a game like that watchable is never going to happen. So the spectators and the fans of those teams may watch it, and the players may watch it. No one else needs to watch that, and that's doesn't change no matter what we do to the game, basically. And I think it's just fair to those teams as well to give them the opportunity to play 40 minutes against those opponents, because that's how they grow. And we've seen it so often in Europe where nations come in for the first time and get smashed by everyone, and the next year it's much closer, and then year later they win a few of those matches. So I don't see that as being that much of a problem, because if you go to world championships, again, soccer, I don't know, basketball and stuff, or like basketball, the Olympics, when the US team comes
Yeah,
against someone from somewhere and they fuck them up, no one complains about that either. And so I don't think that is an issue that needs to be fixed. I think it can be interesting to have the score line and say you want to be first to 7. And for some tournaments, it definitely makes sense, but especially for Worlds or Euros or really big tournaments, I think 40 minutes is a really good time to really show who's the better team. We've all been to those tournaments where the first few rounds are best of 3 or best of 5, and it's just so much luck involved that
yeah,
it's another way of excitement, but it's not dodgeball at the professional level, in my opinion. So I really enjoy the 40 minutes, even though it's really long for me personally to play. But I feel like there is really a lot of room for getting ahead, making a comeback, getting tight matches. And we've seen all of that. We have seen big comebacks like the US Northern Ireland bronze match where they were
oh man,
down by 5
that
or
was hard to
6.
watch.
Yeah, I get
That
that.
was hard to
But
watch.
so comebacks are possible. And at least to this point, I've thought about it really a lot, and maybe Elijah can convince me of something else. But I think 40 minutes is really optimal for that kind of environment to play professional dodgeball, fun dodgeball, recreational dodgeball. There, I think, are lots of different ways to do it, but at least I'm not convinced. And it's much easier for tournament planners as well to do it
Yeah,
time based.
timed. Yeah,
Um, yeah, but yeah, obviously discussion always needs to be had, and there are some rules in cloth I would like to be changed. But on that note, since you also have a phone background, and I actually wanted to have a podcast with Andrew Ketchum a few days ago, but we couldn't make it happen until now. I'm gonna have to answer you a few phone questions, and maybe you can make it understandable to me. So
okay.
I've played my first foam tournament a month ago, and obviously it's Austrian level, so it's really I was a really good foam player there, and I wouldn't be in the US obviously. but there are some things that I just don't understand, and probably because I play too little foam. But maybe you can make like the steelman argument for them. The first one is a really easy one, and everyone has their opinions. But maybe you can convince me why finger blocking, and that's a really little peeve I have. But why did it get thrown out? Was it always that there's finger blocking, or how did that come to be, basically? And what's the point of it, in your opinion?
At least in US, there's never been no finger blocking. It always has like if it hits your finger, you're out. Um, that's I guess how we've been playing with it. I guess it's obviously really hard to ref it, and you're kind of just hoping the player takes their out and be honest with it. But I guess that helps with the game, just the integrity of the game where players take their own outs, and that's where the camaraderie comes from when you respect the team and stuff. But I don't know. In foam, it would make it a lot harder to get someone out if you could finger block. But yeah, this seems like there's a lot of uproar of people wanting finger blocking in foam.
Okay. Because my point basically is I absolutely understand why you have it and why it's a good part. So it makes it much harder to block, and it makes it much easier to hit people out. And since that is the whole point of the game, I completely agree with that. But the thing is, as you said, fair play is really important in dodgeball, and finger blocking is something, at least to my experience, that is unreffable. That's my experience. Probably with more experience you can. And for me personally, honestly, it's really hard to even feel it, but that's probably also experience, because when the ball hits my ball, I sometimes don't know what hit my fingers, because it's such a new feeling to my hand. But I think you get used to that. But the thing is, it puts so much pressure on people to be fair. And also, you never know as an opponent. And in dodgeball, we have always the problem of people who are cheating. But the even bigger problem, in my opinion, is when people think that other people are cheating. And that makes so much toxicity, and it makes the refs to make decisions which they should not make, in my opinion. I think no ref should be made to call a finger block, because it's impossible, in my opinion. So if you put that burden on the refs, so many bad outs and just bad situations are going to arise from that. So I will never put that on the ref. So you put it on the player, and if a player decides not to do it, he has such a big advantage, and it makes for so much toxicity that I think it's not worth it. So I get why it's there. I get the reason. But I think now, and I just heard from a podcast or something, like with the money tournaments, where if you play for nothing and you play with your friends and you play with your bubble, then fair enough. Everyone's going to be incentivized to play fair. But as soon as you don't know the other person, and as soon as there's money on the book, I think half at least of the whole community is going to not take their outs. So I don't see why it stands as a rule, because I get it, but I think it just leaves rooms for so much error, toxicity, and just bad reffing and everything, that it's just not worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely a great take on it. I mean, people are gonna finger block regardless of the rules or not. It's just unfortunate that happens anyways. But yeah, I agree. I feel like if you do implement it, maybe there won't be much of a difference, because foam is already hard to block anyways, and with majority of people already blocking with their fingers, even if they did know or did not know it hit the fingers or not. It's just it's very hard. Like we were talking about with the whole toxicity, it definitely would kind of eliminate that as well. But my only concern would be is, when will it stop? Will it go from fingers to hand, and then to wrists, and then to forearm? It's just kind of like, how far will people take this?
Yeah. Fair enough, absolutely. But I think as well, that is where video really helps, because one, you can, at least in cloth, you can see if it hits the hand. You can usually, on resolution cameras we have, you can see that basically, and fingers you can't. I feel like, and as soon as there is some sort of accountability, it makes it at least easier. Obviously, there's always going to be a line in cloth. Was it the wrist? Was it the hand? Stuff like that. And that's hard enough as it is. And it's still always going to leave that gray area. And fair play is always going to be the utmost importance. But I think taking that out would at least make a lot of really tough cases disappear. There are going to be new ones, and the line is going to be drawn somewhere, but I think it's really tough to draw the line there. But that's just why I wanted to put that question to phone players, because maybe it's something that I'm just ignorant about because it's not happened enough for me, but it's just something that I don't get from that perspective, and I think it's just cause of a lot of trouble for what it's worth.
No, that's a really great take on it.
All right, so then we go to the second one, and that is basically okay. That is also okay. Four problems, and the second one is something that we implemented in Canada as well for the cloth division, is the catch and save rule, where like when you get hit and a player on your team catches the ricochet, it's a save and a catch, and I just can't understand how that rule came into being, because in my opinion, that's my take, it just punishes bad luck twice. And I think the skill of making a catch off another person can be a great skill. Most of the times it's just pure luck, and you just punch it so hard, and it's such a big game changer, basically, where you get one player in, keep one player alive, and get the other player out with something where the other player wasn't at fault. He made a hit. So basically he did everything right and still gets punished so much. So I just don't understand how a rule would just put so much emphasis on something that I would say is mostly luck.
Yeah, we definitely when they did the rules change for this last Worlds, when they implemented that rule, we were kind of confused on why that rule was added, but it made sense to us, the whole luck aspect of it. But there is some luck in dodgeball, anyways. I feel like luck is always an aspect in every game that we play. But we kind of like sat and thought about it, of why would the player that got ricocheted off be out, but the catch still counts, when if a ball hits me and hits my teammate, we're both out, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of just like, why is it one is this way, but the other one is this way? So I think it should just be, I don't know. I think both ways are fine. When we played at Worlds, it was okay. It wasn't too much of a burden or headache to think about. But when you do have like a saving catch or a great catch, when you save your teammate from a ricochet, I don't know. I feel like, because from my perspective, my bias, I think it should save the person as well. But I completely understand why that rule is implemented.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, I honestly, and in the past, at least in Austria, at first it was a save. So basically, if you catch the ricochet, your player stays in and nothing happens, which personally is my favorite, because I think it values the catch. And so you have one good action where someone hits someone out, and you have another great action which cancel each other out, which is, in my opinion, the best case, even though sometimes those ricochet catches are so awesome that they would deserve more than that. And sometimes those ricochet catches are just lazy and stupid, where they deserve less. So I think that balances each other out the best. The other way, which is now in cloth, where the catch and the hits count, is something I can live with as well, because like the first thing you made is a hit, and in our usual rules, like the hit counts the moment you make the hit and not once it hits the floor, which is another stupid thing that was made for cloth at Worlds, which is, in my opinion, another stupid rule in cloth as well. So the hit should count as long as it's not caught by the same person. And if it ricochets and someone else catches it, then it's still a live ball. So I understand that you can make semantically the point that it's just a catch. Fair enough. But both is just, I don't understand it really, that you can make a save and a catch. And I think even though luck equals each other out over the over the long term, yes, it does. But something like that, especially in foam, where maybe you only have like a slow game, is maybe 3-3-4-4 in points, and where if that happens twice, it makes such a huge difference. So where it really can
Yeah.
swing games, and there are a lot of lucky things that can swing games, but this is like a 3 people swing and not a 1 people or 2 people swing. And so I personally, I can't get my head around that, and I feel like in foam also, like since you, or at least we, can't control the ball that good, and sometimes it just rips off you, and sometimes it just pushes off so
Yeah.
slowly. It also makes those ricochet catches so
Yeah.
different that yeah,
Yeah, there's
it's
no worse feeling of you getting a great hit and just seeing your ball just float over to the other corner and they just catch it.
yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it.
No, I hate it so much. It's like my most
Yeah.
pet peeve is like blockers who can block and catch the ball with the block ball in hand
Oh
because they
man.
didn't block it. That is
Yeah.
that is like whew, my antidote or my
Yeah.
kryptonite. But yeah, that's something that also gets me going. But I don't know
Yeah.
how the foam community thinks about that. So that rule wasn't always like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It was always safe catch.
Okay.
For us at least. And I don't think the phone players really think about it too much. From my perspective. I don't think they care that rule is in place, but I think if you changed it, I think they would be a little upset about it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, maybe it's just coming with my bias that I'm like,
Yeah.
and also being a throw heavy player where I
Yeah.
like to throw people out, and then I do that and I get caught and the other one stays alive. And I'm like, okay, so that might be
Well,
something that is very subjective to me and
yeah.
hurts me
What's also hard in
personally.
cloth is the player advantage as well. If it's safe catch and you brought in another player, that's a huge swing in cloth when
Yeah.
uh, whoever wins has more players. So
Yeah,
foam, you can kind of just,
definitely.
all right, that happens, unfortunate, but we can bring this back still.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel so as well that in foam it's less dramatic as in cloth. I think on the other side in foam it's if like you make the first hit and it gets caught like this and you're out for 10 minutes and you didn't make
Yeah.
a mistake. But yeah, I guess it's a point probably more to my heart than to anyone else. So another thing that is probably the one thing I really understand the least, but probably it's also big just coming from the cloth standpoint, is why a pre-throw resets the clock of burden.
So in my opinion, I personally like that rule. It was never implemented early on in USA Dodgeball until uh, they really wanted to change the rules to be closer and more comparable to WDBF rule set. I think with defensive throws, it really punishes the defensive team if you miss. It's a high risk, high reward play. Um, I just think it's one. How do I say this? It's it's very punishing to do that. I just think that if you throw a defensive counter, I think the rule should apply to where the burden resets. Just because like we've played with it before where it doesn't reset, and it's still kind of our rule set in USA Dodgeball where defensive throws don't doesn't reset the clock, and there's no punish to it. You kind of just threw a ball and you disrupted the offensive cadence, and it just if you time it right, it could really mess up the offense, which I completely understand. If like a strategic standpoint, that's really good if you do that on defense, but I don't know. I think it should reset the clock just to keep the aspect of every ball resets the clock or resets the count.
Okay, let me make my counter argument. Because the thing is, you said it's a high risk, high reward situation. So it's fine by itself. And I think it's a high risk, no reward situation in foam at this point. Because the thing is, the
Yeah.
best case is you hit someone. Okay, I mean, the best case is you hit someone, the ball bounces back, you have a hit and still have the ball. But let's say the
Yeah.
normal best case is you hit someone and you lose the ball. And the thing
Yeah.
is, since you do single ball hits in foam, you lose one ball, so the opportunity to the other team to get a hit back is there. So even in the best case, it's a very equal thing. But the thing is, if you don't keep the burden of pace and the clock on the other team, it loses what you said is a bad thing and is in my opinion the most important thing, because it loses the possibility of the defense to make pressure and do anything against the offense. So the way it is now, obviously I'm painting that very black and white now, is that the offense just has a lot of time, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 15 seconds basically to release one
Yeah.
ball. And as the defense, in those 15 seconds, you basically can't do nothing. Because if you throw a ball, you just give them one more ball to have 15 seconds with and just hit someone out as the way they want it. So basically, in the defense, you're just standing there trying to survive and just waiting what happens in the offense. And you have no way to disrupt that really,
Yeah.
unless you're the best
Yeah.
free thrower and you're so effective that that is a net positive thing. And I don't know if that someone is that good at it. So and I think in cloth dodgeball, if you make a pre-throw, you lose the fourth ball, but you can make a hit. You can time it so well that you disrupt the other attack, and you can give them burden of play, and then you get the balls back. So I think it's still a risky play, but it can yield rewards. But if you don't do it correctly, it's going to punish you as well. The other opponents, if you do a pre-throw against us, you get 4 balls, you're going to lose a player, maybe 2. So it's a high risk play, but if you're really good with it, you can help your defense, you can help your middle players survive, make catches, and you can make so much pressure and do active dodgeball from the back line. And I think there's something where I felt like at this tournament, I was completely useless with my ball in hand, because all I thought about was, okay, I'm just waiting for someone to throw, and then I can do a post throw. And that's why I think foam is such a post throw heavy game, because you don't have to put pressure on someone. And if you don't have to put pressure on someone, you can look everywhere and just see who's releasing and then bam, go and release at them.
Yeah.
But I think it misses a really exciting part of the game where the defense can actually take part of the game and can apply pressure. And I felt like foam was suddenly a game with no pressure at all, and it was just who can throw better and dodge better. And that is an
Yeah.
important part of the game, but you can't really protect anyone of your team, and it feels even more of a single player sport to me, because I'm protecting myself but I'm not doing anything for the person next to me, and everyone is in for themselves. And it's just something, probably just coming from my background in cloth and my mindset of how I interpret the game, but it just seems so like the game is missing something. And for me, that really is the team aspect of it.
No, that's a great answer to that question. Yeah, I realized that cloth is a much more team oriented game than foam. Um, and no, I would love to see how it would look at a top level to see defensive throws not resetting the burden. I think that would, like you said, would add another aspect of the game, especially make defense a lot better, because all it is now is just, all right, offense go, defense run up, do something. Now flip the other way. Now it's their turn to do the same thing, instead of just like, hey, there's another aspect of we could throw this ball and kind of like mess them up, and we could play from there. But not, I could definitely see both sides. But it's just the way the rules are and the way the play style is. I think it's okay, but it would be very interesting if we added that rule.
Yeah, I think so too, because at least for me as a spectator, that is something that I really like about cloth. I get like the boring parts, but the most exciting parts are not like 3 players attacking, throwing, dodging, going back, 3 players attacking. I think the in between dodgeball and like the pressure game in between and the pre throws, post throws, punishing for throws is so much more dynamic, and there are so much more great, exciting stuff happening in there that you're just losing that a little bit. And in foam, you obviously have that because you have the throw and instantly getting the post throw. So you have the throw and dodge, throw and catch situation of it as a single player's game where you go like you throw, you got to be ready for the catch and you have to be really fast because the release times are so fast. So you have that mini actions, but you don't have that as a team basically, where it's just a follow up of single, 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 single.
Yeah.
And that can be very exciting because when teams are really in sync, that is really fast and that is really athletic and exciting. But if you can really push teams and push your advantage and get stuff in between, I think personally that would be even crazier and much more exciting. But maybe because the only way I understand it as a good rule is for refs. For refs, it makes it much easier because you always have time to reset. And since there are 6 balls, even though never 6 balls are thrown, you basically only have to track 1 or 2 balls. And that is
it definitely helps
for reffing. For reffing, I absolutely understand it because it would be a nuisance if players pre-throw and post-throw and you have to keep track of 6 balls. And that's personally the reason I thought it was implemented. But otherwise, I think it also just takes a lot of stuff from the game away. But maybe the reffing argument in itself is worth it. I don't know. I have too little, but I'd be interested, just different views on that. So then the last thing, and I think that's also something that is splitting the community probably a bit, is the time restriction. I think there are a lot of foam players I've listened to now who think a little bit of a time restriction might not be a bad idea. And yeah, just what's your point or what's your feeling about what the community point is on that?
Yeah, Elijah has talked about this, and some other players have talked about how that there needs to be time limits in games just to make it more exciting and just to refresh the game. Because with cloth, 3 minutes, all right, new game. Another 3 minutes, new game. You're not just sitting out on the sideline for, could be forever, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however long that game lasts. And I think it'll just make it more exciting, especially in foam, if they have just similar to cloth, 3-minute games and maybe a 1-minute no block at the end of each little match. I think it'll make it very exciting.
Okay, so you are basically for time restricted sets.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, fair enough.
Just because those games can last so long. If you have a good blocker and a good dodger, they can go for a long time.
And I heard like the argument at the top level, it doesn't make that much difference. And I completely agree. Like watching the games, the finals at the World Championships, no one needed time restriction. That was awesome from the beginning till the end. And that is completely fine. But at our level, at least, games can last 30 minutes, apparently. But the problem is if you don't have people who can throw through blocks, and in Austria, for example, you don't have many people who can do that, then games can be so tedious and boring. And then if you can't play as a team and you are out, like one thing I really like about foam, and I'm thinking about ways to include them in cloth, is the opening rush. At the beginning, I was like really against the foam opening rush, and I was like, that is pure chaos. But the thing is, it is pure chaos, but it's really, if you have skills in there and you can dodge really well and are really fast, you can have also a really advantage from that. And in cloth, only very few teams can really take advantage of that. And the only advantage you get is the first throw, which in a male or female game doesn't make that much of a difference over a game.
Yeah.
So basically, I think maybe putting that return line much closer and making that opening rush much more exciting would be a good thing. That's at least what I'm thinking now. I didn't think that before. But the thing with foam is, as it's a really great thing, you can be hit out in the first second if you're a runner, and then you're waiting for 7 minutes, and then again and again.
Yeah.
So it's such an unthankful place, but it's such a cool aspect of the game that even one more reason why I want to make it 4 or 5 minutes is to protect that part, because it's really fun. And it's really exciting, but it's really painful if you're on the receiving side of that and waiting forever. So I think 3 minutes is probably too short because of the slower play ball burden and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I
I think
think you
4 minutes
probably
would be
need
good.
4 or 5 minutes, yeah,
Hmm.
and then no blocking. So I think in foam, hitting everyone out is I understand that, and I think in foam that's also a crucial part of the game. But yeah, but I feel like, at least from my point of view, that there are not many voices against any time restriction. So most of them aren't with 3 or 4 minutes, maybe later on, but I think some sort of time restriction is probably a wide, at least from my point, a wide consensus on that. So has there been something like that, or why is there not any time constriction?
There's no time restrictions on foam. Uh, I think there should be a change. I feel like everyone's mindset is starting to shift to where we kind of want those time restrictions in foam, because seeing how cloth plays, I think the foam players kind of want that now. Just that the quick reset, the quick refresh of every game is just a quick turnaround. Uh, but kind of off topic when you talk about the rush, I would love if they could shorten the clear line for cloth. I think that'll
Yeah,
make the rush so much more intense, especially
yeah,
because we already got
absolutely.
one. We got two players fighting for the middle ball, and then we're gonna rush and do a pitch back. I think it'll make it
Yeah,
really crazy, but really fun to watch.
I think so too. We'll have to think about the injury rate and stuff like that, throwing from that close distance. But
That's true. Yeah.
yeah, maybe that is a rule. But the thing is, I think seeing that from foam, because it really adds another athletic thing to the stuff, to the whole game. And the rush is such a different thing, and the skills and the highlight reels you get just from the rush are so epic, and you get so many exciting situations. And in foam, it doesn't even matter that much, because if you're down one player in the first second, it doesn't really matter for the next 7 minutes.
Yeah.
But in cloth, it could really make an impact. If you have 1 or 2 hits in the first 2 seconds, it can drastically um,
Yeah.
make an impact. So I think that would be fun. I'll have to try that out. Definitely. Haven't thought
It's
about
almost a
that until
guaranteed.
today.
Yeah, it's almost a guaranteed hit because if the middle rushers are fighting for that middle ball, it's on. It's gonna be an automatic kill for whoever gets that
Yeah.
pitch back. So
It's, okay, we
that would
have to try
definitely,
it out. Maybe it's complete mayhem and we have to restrict it to some balls or something, but it's
yeah,
definitely probably exciting.
yeah, it would be very exciting.
All right. So, do you have any like topics with regarding cloth? Because I've talked a lot about foam now, and maybe there, if you came from foam to cloth, are there some rules that you think are really stupid, or some things that you don't understand or want to see changed?
There's definitely a lot of cloth rules I'd like to see change. I can't remember off of my brain, but there's some really weird cloth rules. I had to think about it, like the one we talked about earlier, the pop up where it's catch out rather than catch safe.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of that rule, just because that's what I'm used to. I'm biased.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know. I feel like the disparity, the difference of foam and cloth is really good. I think the cloth rule set as of right now is it's okay. I enjoy it. The games were fun. We had a fun time at Worlds. There wasn't any. We gripe about the rules all the time, but we had a lot of fun at Worlds anyways. And I think the rules just made sense. Uh, but if something I would love to see in cloth is like a no block, just
yeah,
because I like to see chaos, and my playstyle I feel like would work really well with no block.
yeah,
Uh, the scoring is rough. I don't like the tie and the player advantage. I like to see everyone get eliminated, like
yeah.
what kind of we talked about earlier. Uh, just that, just to have an incentive to eliminate everyone to even get an extra point or even just to win, I think would be great for cloth. But I know some people don't like that. I've seen some conversations about it on threads and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like adding the no block to really break that tie would be great.
Yeah, yeah, it's something I've been thinking about, and we've tried it once or twice, and it's pure chaos at this point, and lots of catches apparently. Because the thing is, in no blocking, in cloth, it's fun, and I like it because you can't hide behind the ball, and but it's much harder in cloth to just hit someone out with a single ball. So it's still not the same it is in foam. because in foam, no blocking is just mayhem because you just
Yeah, it's me.
have to dodge with a ball in your head. And I really love that, and I don't think it translates perfectly into cloth, but I still like it. So I'm all for it not having draws and having a like my thought at the moment would be after 3 minutes, if there's a draw, you have 30 extra seconds of no block, and whoever comes out ahead wins the set. And if it's still a draw, you get 1 point or no points. It doesn't matter if everyone gets 1 point or no one gets a point. It doesn't
Yeah,
make any difference. But
that's
so it
something I
would,
was always confused about.
yeah, I don't know either. That's just, I think it comes from a soccer play, but I have no idea. I think it's maybe just to balance out how fast the games are going. And so if a game ends 4-0, it's weird because
Yeah, that's
no
true.
one. So I think it doesn't matter any either way. But I think like 30 seconds extra time with no block really would give an incentive to the team that needs to win to play really aggressive, and to the other team to really defend aggressively. So I think that might add some extra spice to the whole game, and not just stay alive with two balls on your side and throw a waste shot. So I'd be really open to that, and I think it might be a cool idea. What was the other thing you said? Yeah, eliminating every player. I think it's just in 3 minutes, it's not possible. I mean, also it's not a big issue because in men, especially, it happens most of the time, not always, but most of the time.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I think it's also good to have the tactical aspect where you're like, I've worked for this advantage, I get rewarded for it.
Yeah.
And it just puts the burden on the player who is down. So I think as a team sport, I think I'm completely fine with that. But an extra point also might add some extra nuance and excitement to it. So I'm completely open for that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm completely fine with the way cloth is now, but I want to be too mad if there was some drastic changes or even like little minor changes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the only rule that is really dumb at Worlds was again the hit only counts when the ball hits the floor, which is, I don't know if it works for foam. For cloth, in my opinion, it works not at all. And again, it puts so much pressure on the refs to watch a ball after it hits someone, which is just stupid. I think it's good if you have like a hit and a catch at the same time, that like the burden of proof, or basically you just give the catcher the benefit of the doubt. If you can't really see that the hit was clearly first, then in my opinion it should be always hit and catch, because it's just
Mm-hmm.
a skill. If you can catch a ball and get hit by another ball or two other balls, I think the catch should be rewarded. So that's something I think is good. But otherwise, waiting for a ball to drop to the floor or hit something on the floor before you're dead just makes trades so often so inevitable and gives you no advantage for being the faster player and the better player, basically, which is stupid in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's a rule that just happened for Worlds, and I hope it will change again for next year or next Worlds.
Yeah. Poor refs. They
Okay,
have such a tough job.
absolutely. And I think every rule, if it makes it easier for the refs, it's a good rule. We just can make the game ridiculous because of it. But reffing is such a hard job in dodgeball, and everything that makes it easier for players to be more honest and not like reward unfair play, like finger blocking, and makes it easier for the refs, I'm all for it, because at the end of the day, that's what makes the sport possible.
Yeah, I agree. Refs should only be there just to count burden and make a call if no one really sees it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. More
And look
and
at the
at the
lines.
moment, yeah, yeah, and the moment the refs feel the burn to hit take players out or make calls like that, the game is done, because there are so many stupid decisions gonna be made in both ways, and that just destroys the game completely, in my opinion.
But at the same time, we do give a lot of power to the refs in cloth. With ref discretion, there's a lot of ref discretion rules, like the play ball, uh, blue cards, stuff like that, where the
Yeah,
refs do have a bigger hand in cloth than foam,
yeah,
which is kind of unfortunate because cloth uh, ref discretion is very inconsistent. There was
yeah,
games at Worlds where the head refs didn't call a play ball at all, even though we were
yeah.
taking our time and it was really slow. But I heard in Canada or in Edmonton, the refs were really, really hard on play ball.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
very, very
True.
ref dependent on your matches.
Absolutely, that's a big problem. But the thing is, the problem with that isn't the rules, in my opinion. It's the problem that we don't have enough good refs, and no one wants to ref
Yeah.
at an international tournament. So basically, we are very happy with everyone we can get there. And if we change the rules a few months in before, not everyone knows the rules. So I personally don't know the current rules, and I often am not sure about the rules, which is not good, but it's just the way it is. And so it's sometimes really hard if you have line refs who don't know the rules, the head ref doesn't know the rules. So I think it's a systemic problem, but not a rules problem. But it's something that's just a growing pain in the sport, and it will get better once we can afford to pay refs more what they deserve.
Yeah.
Then we can also expect them to be better and know everything. At this point, sadly, I hate the refs huddle, but
Oh man.
but sometimes it's necessary, and I really don't like it, but I think it's still necessary because in cloth so much happens at the same time sometimes that you just need to get your story straight. And just yeah,
Yeah.
it sucks, but we don't have a VR, so I don't see another way as well. And not having the refs discretion is at this point not possible, in my opinion. So if we pay them more, if we have more professional refs, if everyone knows the rules and we don't change them every 2 years, I think those problems will go away. But I don't think those are rule problems. Those are just systemic sport problems, basically.
Yeah. Especially when different federations have different rules and players play in different
Yeah.
federations and different rule sets. It's just there's so
Yeah.
much. Poor refs.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Yeah. Poor refs. All right. So hopefully, I don't know how much time you have left. You have to go to work.
Oh, I'm fine for right now.
Okay, perfect.
It's up to
So
you.
because one, I'm fine. My kids are at home now, but I think my wife still has everything under control. I sometimes heard someone scream or cry, but it's all
Yeah,
right until
I
now. No
understand.
one's came knocking to the closet.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk to you is about podcasting. So you're a fellow podcaster. You started before me. So what made, first of all, love the podcast, and shout out to Rushdown Podcast for everyone who hasn't listened to it. Give it a listen. It's absolutely fun to hear a lot of US perspectives. The post World Championship interviews you did were absolutely awesome. Really loved them. Also, lots of opinionated people in the US, which is really fun and which is not something that we have too much in Europe. So people who are not afraid to be a bit more controversial. So I think that is also something that is sometimes really good for a sport. Can be a little bit toxic at some point, but it's also really good to have players who, especially players who really play at the top and who like want to bring the sport forward. And so I think your platform has been quite great for that as well. And I've really enjoyed all the episodes. So shout out for that. And how do you like podcasting, and why did you start a podcast?
Yeah, thank you for the shout out. So I started off my podcasting for Dodgeball because at the time, I feel like there wasn't any Dodgeball happening at the time I created it, because we had the Dodgeball podcast. You've been on it. Couple Europeans and a lot of international players have been on it. And at the time, there was nothing happening with the Dodgeball podcast. All the other Dodgeball podcasts that were around at the time just stopped making content. So there was nothing coming out for Dodgeball except for tournaments and some film. So I decided to put my hand into it, and try to create my own thing. I try to create more of like a player interview where they talk about their stuff and everything. And I try to do little recaps, but I'm trying to get away from those kind of. But I really just did it just because I had a dodgeball itch that I needed to scratch.
Yeah.
I love listening to dodgeball or anything dodgeball related, and there was just nothing out there. So I just went ahead and took it into my hands, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it then, because I'm sure if I have this urge, I'm sure there's other players that have that too. So it was just something that I've always wanted to do, and it was the right time, right moment, and I just took advantage of. There was no dodgeball content coming out, so
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I really like that. And yeah, I think it's really fun because yeah, there are more podcasts coming out now as well. Like we have a few of them popping off, and I really enjoy that because I like podcasts. I like talking about dodgeball. I like listening to people talk about dodgeball while I'm doing dishes or something else. So
Yeah.
it's quite fun to me, and also getting different opinions, different aspects of the game is really really fun. And I think it's also a good help for newer players, and when the community grows, that you have some sort of outlet for it where people can get informed about dodgeball as well and have more publicity for the sport. So good job on that. Love it.
Thank you.
Keep
Thank
up
you.
the good work. And last but not least, Dodgeball USA. So you've played cloth now. What's coming up next? Are you gonna try to play for the foam national team again? Are you gonna try to create a cloth league around you, or where are we gonna see you at the next World Championships? And how do you combine it with your kids? I'm asking for a
Oh
friend.
yeah. um. So for next Worlds, I really wanted to do foam. It was something I always wanted to do. I failed so many times to make the USA roster for foam. But I also look at, I don't know, wider perspective of the foam roster is so talented. I'm not breaking the starting roster of the 6, 7, 8 guys. And if I was on the bench, what's something I can be different than the next person next to me on the bench as well, right? Foam is like the best 10 players in the US, unfortunately. That's kind of how it is. The best players are foam players. Mm-hmm. So they're all going to be good. Every player on that roster will be good. But I feel like if I be on the cloth team, I could bring much more to the table than foam. I could really help the foam, or really help the cloth roster be good. And just like my experience now with Worlds, I'm able to pass that on as well. So I'm going to stick with cloth. I want to hopefully get to goal again, get to that finals again. Hopefully we have a rematch.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm planning to go to next Worlds, depending if everything goes well with kids and we can make it to wherever the next Worlds is. I don't know if you heard where the location would be.
I don't think it's out yet, but no, sadly not. I think it's at this point either Malaysia, Argentina, or Qatar or Emirates, Saudi. I think I don't know.
Yeah, I heard those same rumors too.
I think as well.
It seems like the louder rumor right now is Argentina, which is unfortunate because my first Worlds was at the cloth hometown, the cloth area, and seeing so much cloth representation was great. And now we're gonna move to a different place where cloth won't be as represented, which is gonna be unfortunate. But I guess as long as the top teams are there, I think it'll still be worth it. But balancing kids, it's really rough. I haven't really been to any practices or leagues or anything except for maybe 3 tournaments a year, just because of family and kids obligation. Just because.
How old are your kids?
My oldest son is 2 years old, and my youngest is 8 months. So,
okay.
So obviously it's a lot harder when they're younger, but it will get easier when they get older. I'm able to do more stuff just because they're not as relied on for a parent. But yeah, as of right now, I don't really do any open plays or practices or leagues or anything. I don't do anything local. I just show up to a tournament, play, go home as soon as possible, get there as late as possible for the tournament. It's very unfortunate because I love dodgeball so much and I had to give up a lot, but family's more important right now, and I love my family so much. So I don't know if you kind of related,
absolutely,
with having to sacrifice a lot of dodgeball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also quite fortunate that, like, my family is very supportive, and my parents and the parents of my wife are also very supportive. So at the World Cup, I don't know if you saw my kids. My older one is 4 and my younger one is 1.5 now. They both were at the World Cup, World Championships, I have to say, for the finals, which was really nice. And the whole family was there. But obviously going somewhere like Argentina, I
Yeah,
have no idea. I mean, I have to get my body next to being a dad and not sleeping as much as I should and not training as much
yeah,
as I should and stuff like that. Balancing it all, we'll see. I'm planning on
yeah.
going to the World Championships 2026, but well, there's Euros before that. I have to try to keep my body in shape till then, and then we'll see from there. But I'm planning on it
You
from
got it.
today's point of
You're
view.
perfectly fine. Yeah, but going to Austria was rough
Yeah,
because it's a week. We have a week long tournament, which I kind of have a gripe about. I wish Worlds could be a little shorter. We could do more than 1 to 2 matches a day. I feel like we could do maybe 3 or 4 matches. Just that's just a bias because us we play a lot of games in one
yeah,
one weekend. That's just how we play our tournaments. But it was hard to be gone for my family for so long. It was really rough
yeah,
because my daughter, she was only 3 months at the time, and we
yeah.
planned her birth around the worlds. We're like, we could only try to have her born during these months. If we can't get pregnant before the certain time, we got
Yeah.
to stop until worlds is over, and then we got to try again. So we really
That's
planning
a
around the worlds.
dodgeballer's perspective. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. It's very fortunate because my wife, she used to play dodgeball too. She kind of had to step aside to be mom and family first, and she really wants
Yeah,
to get back into it. But she's really supportive, and I'm really happy that she allows me to go still play
yeah, that's
dodgeball. But
awesome.
yeah,
Shout
being
out to
gone
the
for so
mom.
long for Worlds, yeah, shout out moms. But
Yeah,
having to sacrifice a lot of time away from family was really rough on me. Um, so that's always been a question up in the air of can I make it to the next Worlds and do that same thing again?
yeah.
It's going to be a rough question. But they get older, it'll be easier. So we'll see.
All right. And otherwise,
Yeah,
see your kids in Argentina or somewhere.
I don't know if they'll go to Argentina. So it's a long time
Yeah, fair
because
enough.
yeah. But I wish it was in Europe again, just for cloth. I feel
Yeah,
like um, I feel like Worlds or World Cup can be
World
separated with hey
Championships.
foam worlds and cloth worlds, right? Because to get the best cloth representation, obviously it has to be in Europe,
Uh,
and for the best foam representation, it could be a lot of different areas than just one area. So I think that would be very very interesting down the line, um, because we see all the time where like oh England could have had a much better squad if it was closer or players couldn't travel because it was just so far
uh,
and it's such a just great disadvantage to teams where it's just so far from them to travel and
yeah.
cost. So
Yeah, obviously. I would love to have it again in Austria. I think Max Golda
yeah,
would die if he had to do that whole thing again. But yeah, obviously, it's also great to have it in new countries and like spark, give the whole community a little bit of a boost. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly would like to go to Argentina or Malaysia, especially to Malaysia. I would really love that. But as a father, I don't like it at all. I would
yeah,
like to have it really close to me. But on the other side, having both foam and cloth at the same tournament is really exhausting and really huge, but it's also great. I think it's really, really healthy to get those two communities together and just keep it a big dodgeball bubble and not like divide it more than it already is. So I think the benefit of keeping those players and the tournaments together is really, really important. So I think there's always something gonna be left in the dust, and some people won't be able to make it. But I think for the growth of the sport and also for the community, it's really important to change
yeah,
continents every now and so
yeah,
often.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I love traveling, and it's just so much rough, so much tougher to be traveling with when you have a family and leaving them at home and stuff. So, or even if you want to take them to travel with you,
Yeah.
it's hard.
So advice to dodgeballers: don't get kids. As
Yeah,
long as you still want to
kids.
compete internationally. Afterwards, do it. And if
Yeah,
you do, really look out that you have a very supportive family system around you that can really help you in those times and support you, because that is the absolute only way it is possible. So really shout out
yeah,
to your wife that she's really letting you do what you do, and hope to see her somewhere at the at the dodgeball stage as well again, and maybe in a few years our kids can play against each other. My kids
oh,
can catch better
that'll be
than
amazing.
I can. I'm training them from the very first day on. They can both do headshots and catch. So
That's awesome.
we'll
That's
see where
awesome.
this is going. Khiem, thank you so much for joining me. This was absolutely a delight. I loved it. And yeah, so much. Have a lot of fun with your podcast. I'm going to be tuning in and listening for all the new episodes. And
It's perfect.
until then, keep throwing those
Yeah.
balls. Try not to get caught, and take care, everyone.